So UFC Fight Night Andrade versus Blanchfield literally just wrapped up, and I'm going to be talking about future potential matchups that the UFC could be making, and also fights that I think make sense, and also fights that I would make if I was a matchmaker. So let's just talk about future potential fights, but before we get into that, I do just want to give a quick breakdown of the card. I thought overall the card was okay. Like, it started off pretty good. There were a lot of finishes early on, and then the main card wasn't that super exciting, except for Aaron Blanchfield's pretty good choke, but we'll talk about that very soon. I was also a little bit disappointed in Hussein Eskabov, the 23-0 prospect. Coming in, he took 3 years off. I thought he was going to be making lots of improvements. I thought he was going to fill out to 145 because he was moving up to 145 after previously competing at 135. He looked very small in the fight. I'm also happy for Clayton Carpenter and AJ Fletcher, but we'll talk about that soon. Let's just get into it. I think Aaron Blanchfield should probably fight the winner of Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso, and I do think that will be Valentina Shevchenko. You could definitely argue that she hasn't earned the title shot yet, because realistically, all she's beaten is Jessica Andrade and Molly McCann, but at the same time, you got to give Valentina Shevchenko someone she hasn't fought before. You got to give Valentina Shevchenko even a style that she hasn't fought before. I know Manon Fiorot is probably wanting the title shot, so if you're not going to give her Shevchenko, maybe we do Manon Fiorot versus Aaron Blanchfield sometime soon. Winner definitely gets the title shot, because I feel like both of them have earned title shots, but I do think that I want to see Aaron Blanchfield fight Shevchenko, and I think she's actually got a pretty decent chance of beating her, because what we've seen in Shevchenko's game is I feel like it would take a very good wrestler and grappler to defeat Shevchenko, and that's kind of the style Blanchfield has, where I feel like Manon Fiorot would just strike with Shevchenko, and we've seen Shevchenko beat almost all the strikers in the division anyway. The next one is Zach Puaga. He beat Jordan Wright. Wasn't that exciting of a fight. It was kind of boring. Most of it really was just contested up against the cage. And on the feet, though, he looked pretty good as well. He didn't really impress me all too much. I'm not going to give him a jump up the rankings. In fact, I'm going to give him Mingyang Zhang, who actually hasn't made his debut. Mingyang Zhang is signed to the UFC, though. He was actually meant to fight Tyson Pedro, which would have been a fun fight, but I believe he pulled out of that fight. If he's injured, this could be a bad pick, but I don't think that he's injured. I do think that he's actually all good to go. I think maybe there was like a visa issue getting into Australia or something like that, but either way, Mingyang Zhang, he hasn't made his debut yet in the UFC. I think he would probably put on a pretty good fight against Zach Puaga. Pretty winnable fight for both guys, in my opinion. Jamal Pogues just beat Josh Parisian. I've put up the wrong... No, I've put up the right one. So Jamal Pogues versus Josh Parisian. I'm thinking this fight's Jake Collier or Martin Boudet, the winner of this fight. Maybe that was a bad call. I was also thinking maybe the winner of Chris Barnett versus Chase Sherman would probably be a better call. But a situation with Jamal Pogues is he's got a broken hand, so he can't just fight in like 2 or 3 months' time. And if you look at the UFC rankings of the heavyweights in the unranked area, they're literally all booked. They've all got booked fights. So Jamal Pogues is kind of in a situation where he's just got to rest with his hand. He probably won't come back for another 6 months or so, because he's got that broken hand. And he'll probably want to make improvements. He's a young guy anyway. I was thinking the winner of Martin Boudet versus Jake Collier, or the winner of Chase Sherman versus Chris Barnett. I think that would be a fun fight, and I think that would be good. I think that's probably what they'll do next. Marcin Pragnell beat William Knight in a fight which William Knight did literally absolutely nothing whatsoever. But you still got to reward Marcin Pragnell with a jump up the rankings, and I feel like maybe him versus Tyson Pedro could put on a pretty good kickboxing fight. I know Tyson Pedro's got grappling. I know he completely gassed out in the first round against Modestas Bukauskas in Australia, but I feel like Tyson Pedro is one of those guys where you put him on the prelims of the pay-per-view, he's going to put on a fun fight, win or lose, really. I know the fight against Modestas Bukauskas wasn't anything too special, but there was still quite a bit of hype going into that one. I think Tyson Pedro versus Marcin Pragnell would be good. Prelims of a pay-per-view probably in a few months' time. I think that makes a bit of sense. Alexander Hernandez beat Jim Miller. 30-27 scorecards were weird. I thought it was 29-28 Alexander Hernandez, and it's coming from someone that actually picked Jim Miller to win. But I do think that Alexander Hernandez probably deserves maybe a little move up the rankings at 145 pounds. Nothing too crazy. Charles Jourdain, I feel like, is a guy that would definitely accept the matchup with Hernandez, and that would be a banger. Very good fight, winnable fight for both guys, really. I think Jourdain might be able to take that one, but I think it makes sense. He said he wants to go back to 145 pounds. He fought Billy Quarantillo. It was a little bit too much for the weight class, but now he can fight Charles Jourdain. So I think that would be a good one. I think that would make sense. Nazim Sadikov just fought Ivan Aldo. I was thinking of giving someone like Nazim Sadikov someone like Vyacheslav Borshev, because that would be an amazing striking fight. But I was like, oh, Vyacheslav Borshev is probably going to be like cherry picking his opponents at this point, because he's going to have to get a win, because he will probably get cut with a loss. So I didn't think of that one. I've got one here. I think a guy that would definitely accept the fight and would be a banger fight, Otman Zaitar. He's 13-1. I know he did just lose to Matt Frivola in his big comeback fight after I think he got suspended for the sack of potatoes in Dubai or on Fight Island or whatever it was. Very good fight. Otman Zaitar obviously didn't look amazing against Matt Frivola, but I think him versus Nazim Sadikov would put on a pretty fun fight. I just spoiled the next one. It's Mayra Bueno Silva versus Penny Kianzad. Mayra Bueno Silva, she's moving up the rankings here. You go to the women's rankings and you look at Mayra Bueno Silva. She's 14. She just beat number 12, Lena Landsberg. So she's probably going to take the number 11 or 12 spot. I was thinking of matching her up with Julia Avila, but I believe Julia Avila just gave birth a couple of months ago, so she's probably going to take a bit of time off. So I thought, let's move up the rankings a little bit. Macy Chiasson is not going to make the weight. I didn't bother with that one. And Penny Kianzad is the next available one, really, up the rankings. So I think Mayra Bueno Silva versus Penny Kianzad would be a good fight. The winner has to move up the rankings. The loser will have to defend their ranking again, if it's Penny Kianzad, that is. Jamal Emmers versus Hussein Eskabov. I've got Jamal Emmers to fight Lucas Almeida. Jamal Emmers is not a young guy. He is almost 34 years old. If he wants to make a run in the rankings, he has to do it now. And I feel like Lucas Almeida, although he's not very experienced in the UFC, he does have 2 wins in the UFC. So he's probably a couple of fights away from a top 15 shot himself. And I feel like maybe a win over Lucas Almeida for Jamal Emmers would probably put him in a position where he's 2 fights away from a top 15 spot. So Jamal Emmers versus Lucas Almeida is the pick. Sorry guys, I'm just really tired right now. Felipe Willens beat OSP in the first minute of the fight. Just kind of ran out there. He wants a top 15 opponent. He doesn't get a top 15 opponent. He gets Ion Cutelaba. And if he beats Ion Cutelaba, to be fair, you probably could argue that he could get a top 15 opponent, because Ion Cutelaba, although he's looked really bad recently and he's lost a lot, he's still like a guy that I believe was ranked pretty recently, and he did beat Devin Clark in 2021. He lost to Ryan Spann, who's pretty highly ranked. Johnny Walker's pretty highly ranked. He did lose to Kennedy Nzechukwu. I think that Felipe Lins versus Ion Cutelaba is probably the fight to make. We don't give Felipe Lins a ranked opponent yet, but I feel like maybe if he beats Ion Cutelaba, you could justify giving him a ranked opponent. So that's the one for me. AJ Fletcher beat Themba Gorimbo. He looked pretty good. Happy for AJ Fletcher, to be honest. It seemed like if he lost this fight, he was probably going to get cut. The fight I've got for him is with Orion Kosuke. At the end of the day, AJ Fletcher is 1-2 in the UFC. He's probably going to be looking for winnable matchups from now. I think Orion Kosuke is a pretty winnable matchup for him, and Orion Kosuke is 1-1. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that makes sense. 2 guys that are pretty low down on the rankings, and I think it makes sense. To me, the next one is Clayton Carpenter. Looks really good in the grappling, fighting Juan Camilo Ronderos. I've got him to fight Carlos Hernandez. You can't give Clayton Carpenter a big jump up in the rankings. I feel like Carlos Hernandez is probably a guy that's going to be looking for a guy that's a little bit lower ranked than Alan Nascimento, because Alan Nascimento is huge for 125. He did lose that in the first round. He's probably looking to come back, probably not now, but in a few months' time. And I feel like Clayton Carpenter is one of those guys that's not going to rush anything. He seems to be pretty methodical with his career choices, you know what I mean? He's a very serious guy, always training, full on 24/7. I feel like he's one of those guys that would be not in a rush to get back. He wouldn't be in a rush to get back into fighting. So yeah, I feel like maybe Carlos Hernandez versus him could fight maybe 4 months, 5 months time or so. With Themba Gorimbo, I was thinking he could fight Blood Diamond. Blood Diamond's on the edge of getting cut. Themba Gorimbo didn't look amazing against AJ Fletcher. I know it wasn't the original opponent, but he didn't look incredible. I think maybe Themba Gorimbo versus Blood Diamond would be a good fight to make. Hussein Eskabov, you need to go to 135 pounds. I think Lena Landsberg's getting cut. Hopefully Evan Alder gets a very winnable fight in his next one. I think Jordan Wright's getting cut, and I think William Knight's getting cut. I think a lot of fighters are getting cut after this card. I think Jordan Wright's getting cut just because he hasn't won in a long time. Since 1-4, 1-5 in the UFC. I don't know why things are going working. William Knight missed weight by 13 pounds against Devin Clark. and then he fought at heavyweight and lost. No, against Maxim Grishin. Then he fought at heavyweight and lost. And he just lost to Marcin Prachnio, looking terrible doing it. I think William Knight's getting cut. I think a lot of people are getting cut off this card. I think Lena Landsberg's getting cut. I think that William Knight's getting cut. I think Jordan Wright's getting cut. A lot of fighters are going to get cut after this card, in my opinion. So that's cool. Should be interesting, though. It'll be good to see what happens in the future. Let me know what you think in the comments, as always.